You're a stranger to me. If you want to come in, the entrance fee is $30,000. It was Lynn's important wedding day. Dressed in jewelry and clothes I wouldn't normally wear, and wearing heels I wasn't used to, I headed to the venue. However, Lynn didn't let me into the venue easily. Suddenly, I was confused when asked to pay an entrance fee. Seeing my confusion, Tom, who was standing next to me, muttered a single phrase. "Let's go back," he whispered. At that moment, I could feel the tension leaving my body. Considering how I had been treated so far, I realized there was no need to persuade her just to attend the wedding. That thought crossed my mind. Yes. And with that, I accepted Tom's suggestion and left the venue. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of Lynn, looking triumphant. When will her character ever improve? Maybe it never will. Was I even right to try to interfere in Lynn's life? Such thoughts clouded my mind. 3 minutes after leaving the venue, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Lynn. I wondered what she wanted as I answered the call. Little did I know at the time that this incident would escalate into something much bigger. My name is Mary Nelson. I'm 43 years old. After graduating from college, I moved away from my hometown to work as an office worker at a construction company. Since my college days, I had always felt a sense of dread about entering the workforce. Just before joining the company, I was filled with various concerns, like whether I could handle the job or build good relationships with others. But the work environment was pleasant, and my colleagues were all kind, which soon dispelled my anxieties. Supported by my bosses, seniors, and peers, I was able to take my first step as a working professional. Every day was about getting through work while being helped by those around me. Of course, there were times when I got scolded or felt down, but I think I was able to continue working because of the positive work environment. After a few years on the job, I even had juniors, and my life had become busier yet more enjoyable than before. However, I began to face a personal issue. It was about not being able to get married. Actually, not just about getting married. I didn't even have a boyfriend. Some colleagues who joined the company after me got married. I often found myself unable to sincerely say, "Congratulations on your wedding." Would I remain single forever, left behind as everyone else got married? My mind was haunted by the worst possible outcomes, and I would often feel down alone. Then one day, I was invited to a mixer by a colleague. I was probably just there to make up the numbers or to make others look good. I could foresee feeling miserable if I went. But for some reason, I wanted to show my face there. On the day of the mixer, when I arrived at the designated place, some participants had already formed their own little groups. I found an empty seat and sat down, waiting for the mixer to start. I had a faint hope that something might change once it began. But my hope was quickly dashed. Even after the mixer started, the other participants were enjoying their own conversations. It seemed like I wasn't even in their line of sight. Before I knew it, my mind was filled with thoughts of how and when I could make excuses to leave. However, about an hour into the mixer, a man approached me. That man would later become my husband, Tom. "Is this seat taken?" "Yes." I couldn't respond well to his sudden approach, but Tom didn't seem to mind. "We've already introduced ourselves, so we know each other's names." "Mary, right? I noticed you were alone the whole time." "Oh, no, you didn't have to worry about me." Tom gave a light smile and took a sip from his glass. Come to think of it, Tom seemed to be drinking alone too. As I was vaguely thinking about this, Tom began to speak up. "I was drinking alone too, so I thought it would be nice to have someone to talk to." "Yes, I'd like that." It might not be the best way to say it, but we were like two leftovers. Maybe that's why, but somehow our wavelengths matched, and it felt comfortable talking to him. Before I knew it, the mixer, which had felt so long, was about to end. "It's almost over." As I was thinking I didn't want it to end, he made a suggestion. "Would you like to exchange contact information? I'd like to see you again if you're okay with it, Mary." Oh, yes, of course. I was so surprised to be asked for my contact information that I blurted out an absurdly loud response. But the thought of having another chance to meet him. I quickly took out my smartphone and we exchanged contact details. After that, Tom and I started to meet frequently. And over the course of a few months, we progressed from friends to a romantic relationship. I had always hoped to have a boyfriend someday, but I never imagined that a guy I met at a mixer would become my boyfriend. With every date, my feelings for Tom grew stronger. I just felt happy being with Tom, and I often hoped he felt the same way about me. I wished this time could go on forever. Eventually, I even started to hope that maybe, just maybe, I could marry Tom. 6 months into this lifestyle. While talking with Tom as usual, he suddenly looked troubled. What's wrong? Well, there's something I want to talk about. Tom took a deep breath and started to speak. What he told me was shocking. Tom revealed something surprising: he had been divorced once before. And apparently, he has a child named Lynn. But Lynn isn't his biological child nor his ex-wife's. They had adopted Lynn together during their marriage. However, following a particular argument, their marriage fell apart. Eventually, they got divorced. And since his ex-wife lost interest in Lynn, Tom took her in and has been raising her alone. He hasn't yet told her about this situation. He plans to tell Lynn when she becomes an adult. I should have mentioned this earlier. It must be a shock to hear this all of a sudden. Well, I was indeed surprised. But it didn't make me want to leave Tom. In fact, I wanted to help Tom raise Lynn. I thought about it. I'm serious about our future together, Mary. That's why I needed to tell you this. If this disappoints you, I'd understand. Disappointed? I'm happy you shared this with me, and I love everything about you, Tom. I want to be with you and share our lives together. When I shared my feelings, Tom's face lit up. Really? Of course. I wouldn't lie about this. Thank goodness. Thank you. Then, Tom shared more about Lynn. His expression was much softer than the tense one he had before. Would you like to meet Lynn? I think you'll be living together with us eventually. He looked down, slightly embarrassed as he muttered. Yes. I'd love to meet her. There was no reason for me to decline. I nodded with a smile. A week later, I visited Tom's house and met Lynn for the first time. Hello. Hello. After a brief introduction, Tom led the conversation. Lynn didn't look at me much. She wasn't on her phone, but she kept looking at the floor or the walls, never meeting my eyes. What's wrong? You seem off. Do I? It's nothing. Even after that, Lynn didn't look at me. Lynn, you're in middle school now, right? Well, Despite my attempts to engage her, her responses were somewhat indifferent. It's a tricky age, and maybe she doesn't want to talk to her father's girlfriend. Sensing that, I didn't push for communication. Then, 30 minutes later, when Tom went to the bathroom, Lynn, who seemed uninterested in me until now, suddenly started a conversation. Hey, are you gonna marry my dad? Well, we've been talking about it, yes. There was no need to lie. I honestly shared that I was considering marriage. Lynn then scrutinized me and snorted with laughter. You and my dad, huh? I guess it's okay, but Dad has terrible taste in women. Couldn't he find someone better? Excuse me? I was taken aback by her words and had to ask again. Why are you so surprised? I'm just saying what I think. It would have been nice if he dated someone prettier, then he could have bragged about it. Well, I hadn't expected such comments at our first meeting, and I struggled to respond. No matter what Lynn says, my desire to marry Tom hasn't changed. But can we live together harmoniously? Can I really be a good mother to her? My anxiety about our future life only grew. A year after meeting Lynn, Tom and I got married. Even though we had been meeting Lynn during that time, it seemed she still didn't like me. Her looks and attitudes, all seeming to find me annoying, bewildered me. Tom seemed troubled too. No matter how much he cautioned her, she wouldn't listen. He had apologized to me several times for Lynn's behavior. "I'm really sorry. I never imagined Lynn would be rude to you too." "It's okay, don't worry about it." Indeed, some of the things Lynn said were hurtful. But that never made me think of stopping the marriage. I vaguely hoped Lynn would calm down eventually. However, my wish didn't come true. 2 years after marrying Tom, Lynn had become more unruly than I could have ever imagined. "Hey! I want my allowance." "I just gave it to you." "What are you spending it on?" "Socializing with friends." "And, by the way, isn't my allowance too little? My friends get more." I was sure I was giving Lynn enough allowance. Yet, she claimed it wasn't enough. "Talking about luxuries. No means no. You're so useless." Lynn had been frequently hanging out with friends since middle school. The frequency increased in high school, and so did her demands for more allowance. "Seriously unbelievable. How dare you act like a mother when you're not even related by blood?" "What do you mean by acting like a mother? I may not be related by blood, but I am your mother now." Maybe I was a bit harsh. But Lynn wouldn't listen otherwise. "I'm so irritated. Getting all high and mighty. Who do you think you are, saying you're my mother?" No matter how much I tried, Lynn continued to say hurtful things to me. It's okay if she doesn't accept me as her mother, but this is a different matter. "Regardless of what you say, the fact is that I am your mother." "You just repeat the same thing. This isn't going anywhere." It's always like this. Lynn leaves before we can resolve our discussions. And the next day, we go through the same back and forth. I could understand if she only ignored what I said, but Lynn didn't listen to Tom either. "Hey, Lynn! Enough is enough. Don't trouble your mom like that." "What mom? She's just a stranger." "A stranger. I don't need to listen to her." "Lynn." Her grades had significantly dropped since middle school. Her behavior had worsened. I felt overwhelmed by everything. At first, I thought it was just her age, but now that she's in high school, I'm seriously worried about her future. But now that her personality is formed, I couldn't do much about Lynn. "Hey! Give me my allowance. Now. I just gave it to you. When did you spend it? What does it matter what I use it for? Haven't I told you before? I need it for hanging out with friends." "What, you think it's okay for me to be left out?" Lynn always used her social life as a shield whenever her allowance was denied. "That's an extreme." "It's not extreme. You just don't understand at all." Where did I go wrong? I hate my past self for not being able to deal with Lynn properly. Even though she hasn't liked me from the beginning, maybe there was something more I could have done. Every time Lynn said something cruel, I felt not anger, but a sense of failure. 3 years later, Lynn, having graduated from high school, wasn't studying or working and was leading a lazy life. She often stayed home all day, but also went out whimsically. No matter how much I advised her, my words never seemed to reach her. "Waking up at this time again. Can't you start getting your act together?" What do you mean by properly? I need specifics to understand. What I mean by a proper life is so annoying. Don't bother explaining, it's such a hassle. Lynn interrupted me and started getting ready to go somewhere. Where are you going today? Does it matter? I'm an adult now. It's none of your business where I go or what I do. But, oh, so irritating. Oh, that's right. Give me some pocket money. When she was a student, I used to give her an allowance. Even beyond the set amount, she'd frequently beg for more. I regret spoiling her too much. But now, Lynn is a high school graduate. I wish she'd take care of her own finances, whether through a job or something else. If you claim to be an adult, at least earn your own money for leisure. God, you're so annoying. My plea never reached Lynn. Instead, she shocked me with her revelation. I don't need to work anymore. What? What do you mean? Surely you're not planning to. I can't stay in this house forever. I'm getting married. My husband said it's okay for me to be a stay-at-home wife, so I don't need to work. I was hearing this for the first time. My mouth fell open in shock. Marriage! I had no idea. Well, I'm telling you now. Lynn was grinning, oblivious to my feelings. Surely, marriage requires proper preparation and introductions, doesn't it? If you've decided, you should have told us sooner. Who is he? What does he do? Don't ask so much. I could bring him over sometime. Really? Please do. I couldn't believe Lynn was offering to introduce her fiancé herself. I was surprised, but I gladly accepted her proposal. That evening, I shared with Tom what I had discussed with Lynn during the day. Initially surprised, he soon had a look of relief on his face and murmured, "So, she's getting married, huh?" Despite not being related by blood, he had raised her with care, and she was no less important to him. It must have been a moment filled with deep emotions for him. After pondering for a while, Tom's gaze fell on the newspaper, appearing somewhat lonely. Later on, Lynn, as promised, brought her fiancé over. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ricky." His voice was clear and behavior was confident. They gave me the impression of a genuinely nice young man. Ricky works in sales at a major trading company. He met Lynn during high school, fell in love at first sight, and has been together ever since. It was such a heartwarming story that it made me smile. Lynn, too, seemed to have a softer expression than usual. An hour later, the greetings concluded, and Lynn left the house with Ricky. She had met a wonderful person. The fact that Lynn had treated me harshly hadn't changed, and I had no intention of forgiving her. Yet, seeing her smile somehow made me feel relieved and brought a smile to my face as well. A year later, the day of Lynn and Ricky's wedding arrived. I was overjoyed to be able to see Lynn in her bridal attire. I prepared myself, my heart racing with excitement. Dressed in jewelry and clothes I don't usually wear, and high-heeled pumps, I headed to the wedding venue. I couldn't help but notice Tom's hands seemed to tremble as he drove. Was it from excitement or nervousness? Probably both. Both gave how much he was looking forward to this wedding. Upon arriving at the venue and entering, there were luxurious chandeliers and decorations, and I couldn't help but be dazzled, no matter my age. I've been to friends' and acquaintances' weddings at places like this before, but the awe never fades, no matter how many times I experience it. "Oh, you're here." Lynn approached us as we were looking around the venue. It seemed she had been waiting for us. "How are things going?" "Never mind that." Lynn didn't answer my question but pointed at me and said, "You're a stranger to me. If you want to come in, the entrance fee is $30,000. I was at a loss for words. I hadn't expected her to treat me with such disdain here. Seeing my confusion, Tom, who was standing next to me, spoke up. "Let's go." At that moment, I felt the tension leave my body. Indeed, I had been looking forward to the wedding. However, the harassment from Lynn hadn't changed. Was there a need to force myself to attend the wedding of someone who had been hostile toward me? Lynn's words had rapidly cooled my enthusiasm for the wedding. Yes. I accepted Tom's suggestion and left the venue. As we were leaving, Lynn's triumphant expression caught my eye. We exited the venue and got into the car. There was a heavy silence between Tom and me. Neither of us have the energy to talk or find a topic to discuss. I was overwhelmed by a sense of futility and let out an involuntary sigh. Did happiness just slip away again? While I was lost in thought, about 3 minutes after leaving the venue, my phone rang. Lynn's name was displayed on the screen. Why would she call after sending us away? As I hesitated, the call ended abruptly. But then it rang again. Call after call came in, only to be disconnected by her. It was a perplexing sight. And then, on the next call, I cautiously answered. That moment. Hey! Come back quickly! Lynn's voice pierced my ear. What? What's this all about? Just come back. How can I? We're already on our way home, and besides, after you told us to leave, now you want us back? Ricky got angry at me. Why did you send your own parents away? He asked. Hey, come back quickly. Lynn's self-centeredness was astonishing. Did she really think a plea would make us return? What? You want us back because you got scolded? Just forget all that. Just come back. The wedding will be ruined if it goes on like this. Lynn pleaded in a teary voice. However, her voice didn't move me. You shouldn't have said strange things in the first place. What's this about a $30,000 entrance fee? Then, at least ask Dad to come back. Lynn's voice was so loud that Tom, who was driving, could hear the conversation. There's no way we're going back. What are you talking about? Neither Dad nor Mom is coming back, so deal with it yourself. Mom, you can hang up the phone. I did as Tom suggested and hung up the phone. Lynn was making a fuss until the very end, but I ignored it. After hanging up, I immediately put my phone in my bag. When I checked my phone after getting home, as expected, there were several missed calls. All from Lynn, of course. The number easily exceeded 20, and I couldn't help but laugh at her desperation. The calls had stopped abruptly a few minutes earlier, perhaps she had finally given up. Ultimately, there was no contact from Lynn for the rest of the day. Nor the following day, nor the day after. She must have been scolded severely by Ricky and had no desire to contact us. We also had no inclination to reach out to her, leaving things as they were. However, a week later, Lynn suddenly showed up at our house. Seeing how angry she looked, I didn't dare let her in, fearing what she might do. I decided to deal with her at the entrance. What's up? Why are you here all of a sudden? Why didn't you come to the wedding? I asked you so much. Why would we? I called you so many times, and you didn't pick up. Ricky was really angry, and I got cold looks from his relatives. What are you going to do about it? It's astonishing how self-centered she is. I sighed and responded to Lynn. We did nothing wrong. We left because you started talking about an entrance fee. And we didn't want to come back because, honestly, it's because of how you've acted all this time. My past behavior? Lynn tilted her head, seemingly unaware of her actions. Doesn't she realize what she's been doing? It's more concerning than infuriating. You ignored us, went out to play, kept asking for money. You throw a tantrum over just a bit of scolding and lock yourself in your room. At first, we tolerated it because we thought you were just going through a phase, but we all have our limits. Huh? That issue? Can you please not refer to it as a tantrum? It makes me sound like a child. If you're asking me to stop, does that mean you acknowledge that your behavior warranted such a description? If it didn't, you would deny it. I seized the opportunity to counter. I saw the opportunity and took it. If I let it pass, who knows when we'll get the chance to talk face to face again. That's what I thought. However, Lynn deflected my response and changed the subject. Even after all these years, your know-it-all attitude really gets on my nerves. After all, you're a stranger to me. Stop trying to boss me around. If that's the case, then as a stranger, you shouldn't be asking me for money, right? Got it? Lynn looked at me with a face full of resentment. Obviously frustrated at not being able to retort. Enough. I don't care about you anymore. Just go away. Okay, then. Bye. As Lynn stormed off with her parting shot, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time, I had conveyed my thoughts so directly, and it felt liberating. Now, for the time being. She might not come barging in anymore. That moment made me realize. True enough, she didn't return. But soon I encountered something unexpected. A month after Lynn's last visit, I met Ricky downtown. Hello, Ricky. I felt it necessary to apologize for the wedding incident, so I initiated a conversation. Sorry about the trouble during the wedding. I got entangled in our family drama. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Lynn was at fault, after all. But Ricky seemed uneasy. As if my approach caught him off guard. Is everything okay? Oh, are you busy? I'm sorry. I'll leave then. No, it's not that. Just, have you been discharged from the hospital? Discharged? Huh? It seemed that Ricky had been informed by Lynn that I was hospitalized. I'm sorry. I wanted to apologize for the wedding stuff, but I was told you were hospitalized and couldn't be contacted, and that no one except your father and Lynn could visit you. Hospitalized? Why would they say I was hospitalized? Yes. So, I didn't expect to meet you here. I'm sorry, I must have seemed rude. No, not at all. You've done nothing wrong. I conveyed my thoughts to Ricky, despite being puzzled. Ricky's expression softened slightly at my words. But why would she lie about you being hospitalized? Indeed, why would she lie about such a thing? What was Lynn trying to achieve? Recalling the tumultuous past, I desperately thought of what Lynn might have planned. What Lynn tends to think. Oh. Maybe. A thought suddenly struck me. I couldn't be sure if I was right, but decided to share it with Ricky as one possibility. Maybe she didn't want to be scolded by you? Didn't want to be scolded? I heard from her that you were quite angry about the wedding incident, right? Maybe she said something to garner sympathy, thinking that even someone angry would soften if they heard her parents were hospitalized. Does that make sense? I see. When I suggested a possible reason, Ricky seemed to understand. Indeed, after the wedding, I was so angry that I barely spoke to her. Hearing that her mother was hospitalized made me feel like continuing to be angry was wrong. Ah. I fell right into Lynn's trap, didn't I? How embarrassing. Ricky frowned. He was clearly upset about being deceived. What should I say to comfort him? As I was pondering, Ricky spoke up again. But, if that's the case, then why? What's wrong? Ricky looked even more perplexed than when he first saw me. Curious, I asked for more details. Lately, Lynn has been saying she's going to visit you in the hospital, leaving the house often. She says she's staying at her parents' house because her dad is lonely. Back home? But she hasn't been there. At that moment, the worst-case scenario flashed through my mind. Should I tell Ricky, or should I keep quiet? No, I definitely need to say something. He must have realized it himself by now. Could it be that she's not cheating, is she? Yeah, you think so too, don't you? It's just not possible that she's staying at a friend's house so often. Ricky's face turned pale rapidly. The lies he had been told, the possibility of infidelity. How his feelings towards Lynn might have changed in these few minutes. I can't be certain, but it's clear they're not positive. Should consider hiring a detective agency for an investigation. Not forcing you, but... That was the best advice I could offer. Having evidence would never hurt. Whether to divorce or not is up to Ricky. He doesn't need to rush, he should take his time to decide. Later, Ricky, after a moment of contemplation, said with determination, "Thank you. I'll consult with a detective agency." His eyes showed resolve, yet also a hint of sadness. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Ricky. According to the detective agency's investigation, it was confirmed that Lynn was cheating. He sounded exhausted just by his voice, having been shown overwhelming evidence. But cheating. It was just a speculation, yet facing the reality was painful. I'm so sorry. for my daughter causing such trouble. It's okay. Struggling to find the right words for the disheartened man, I could sense Ricky taking a deep breath. And he said, I'm going to divorce her. Is that okay? Of course. I have no right to stop Ricky's decision. Especially when my daughter is the cause of his trouble. Ricky mentioned he wanted to have a discussion, including us. He could have gone through a lawyer, but he wanted to hear everything straight from the source first. There was no way to refuse. I, too, wanted to hear Lynn's side of the story. So, we scheduled the meeting for a week later and ended the call. What would happen next? Would Lynn admit to her actions? Overwhelmed by anxiety, I sank into the nearby sofa to escape my thoughts. A week later, Tom, Ricky, a sullen Lynn, and I were all gathered in my house. What's this about? I have plans, you know. Lynn said, lounging back dismissively. You could have discussed whatever you wanted without dragging me here, couldn't you? Couldn't you two have talked alone? Didn't want to? It's not like that. We wanted your parents to be involved too. I said I didn't want to, but you went ahead anyway. How selfish. The last thing I wanted was to be called selfish by Lynn. I was not the only one who thought so. But Ricky, unfazed, just nodded. So, what is it? Hurry up, I'm doing you a favor by being here. Lynn said, clapping her hands impatiently. Look, Lynn. We should get a divorce. Ricky said, silencing the room. Lynn seemed unable to comprehend what was being said to her. What? Divorce? Why? I don't have the confidence to continue with you. You're selfish, spend too much. I haven't been selfish or anything. It's not just that. Ricky continued, pulling out a stack of documents. You've been cheating, haven't you? I had a detective investigate. What? A detective? That's so low. Instead of denying the cheating, her reaction to the detective indicated something guilt-ridden. And didn't you wonder? Why is your supposedly hospitalized mother-in-law here? Didn't you find that strange? Oh. Lynn might have spun a web of lies too vast for her own comprehension. Seeing me, her face turned pale. Mom, why are you here? How about you stop acting so innocent? And now you call me Mom. Listen, I know about the lie you told Ricky that I was hospitalized, about your so-called visits to your affair partner under the guise of visiting me, and about staying at your parents' home because Dad was lonely. That's... Lynn's face was a picture of despair. Had she truly believed her lies would never be uncovered? And just so you know, I was the one who suggested Ricky consult a detective agency. What? Why would you suggest such a thing? I'm your daughter, aren't I? Couldn't you have taken my side for once? I'm your daughter, you say? But we're legally strangers, right? So, I'm not your mother or anything, am I? It's too late to start calling me Mom now. That's exactly why you're seen as selfish. Lynn always tried to manipulate situations to her advantage. I couldn't be manipulated by her any longer. Enough. Everyone is just the worst. Why do you all treat me so horribly? Have you ever considered my feelings? I could say the same to you. The reason things have come to this is that you've lived your life however you pleased. I used to love Lynn and tolerated her whims. But after being lied to and cheated on, I can't trust her anymore, nor do I want to continue living with her. All I want now is a divorce. Divorce. Though a normal request under these circumstances, Lynn seemed unable to comprehend. Why? Of course. You have to pay for what you've done. No. Absolutely not. Lynn began to throw a tantrum, as usual. I've done nothing wrong. Yes, I cheated. But ultimately, it's Ricky's fault. Me. Ricky was shocked by the sudden accusation. But the reason she gave was also selfish. You weren't attractive enough. Boring to be with. I wanted to break up, really. But then you landed a good job, so I thought there might be some financial benefits. Really now? I almost leaned in, angered by Lynn's words. But I reminded myself that this was between Lynn and Ricky and held back. So, you propose, and now you want a divorce and alimony? Do you think I, a housewife, have money? Weren't you the one who said it was okay for me to be a stay-at-home wife? You should take responsibility and support me for life. You only see me for my money, don't you? Of course. I can't see you as a man anymore, so I'll continue my relationship with my boyfriend. I was appalled by her cruel words. And I felt a sense of despair. But then, oh. Lynn had a sudden change of heart. I'll agree to the divorce. Really? What sudden change is this? I looked up to see Lynn wearing an eerily bright smile as she looked at Tom. Hey, Dad. Can you give me money? What? You're not a stranger, but Dad isn't. You'll surely take my side, right? Please, Dad, for your cute daughter. Lynn approached Tom with a cajoling tone. That scene was unbearably vile. All eyes turned to Tom, who had been silent since Ricky and the others arrived. What decision would he make? I can't do that. Why not? Because I'm not your real father. You're adopted. By your logic, we're not related by blood, so we're strangers. The atmosphere froze. Not just Lynn, but Ricky's face also stiffened. Also, hearing everything, how can you say you've done nothing wrong after living so selfishly? I raised you, hoping you'd become a kind person, even if we're not related by blood. This has to be a lie. You're just saying this because you don't want to pay the alimony, right? I know it. It makes no sense for me to lie now. Unlike you. Anyway, neither your mother nor I will help you. It's a good chance to dissolve the adoption. From now on, you're on your own. I saw tears fall from Lynn's eyes. Please, don't abandon me. I can't suddenly live on my own. Mom, Ricky, say something. Sorry, but I agree with Dad. You can't just use us when you're in trouble. You've caused enough trouble, so now it's time to handle things yourself. Lynn turned to Ricky, seeking support. Ricky, you're on my side, right? No. I can't live with you anymore. It's sad not knowing your real parents, but if I stay with you, I'll ruin myself too. Please, someone. Don't abandon me. I admit I was wrong. I'll change, I promise. Usually, Lynn's tantrums would get her what she wanted, but not today. She was crying and repeating that she was at fault. But all her words sounded like lies. Surely, once things settle down, she'll likely return to her usual self-indulgent ways. We all watched Lynn silently until she agreed to the divorce and the payment of alimony. Ultimately, whether Lynn resigned herself to the situation or not, she accepted the divorce. True to her nature, she didn't offer a single apology until the very end. Later, through a lawyer, Ricky filed for divorce and alimony. Tom and I proceeded with the dissolution of the adoption. Lynn seemed resigned, no longer displaying her usual bravado. How would she manage her life after losing everything? It was a mystery only she could solve. Even after dissolving the adoption, Lynn came to our house a few times asking for money, but we turned her away, now being strangers. Her sad face was noticeable, but we no longer had to care. Over time, my feelings for her had completely vanished. And it seemed Tom felt the same. Considering how kind Tom is, I thought he might still care for Lynn even after dissolving the adoption. However, he stopped mentioning Lynn's name entirely. That alone made it clear just how angry Tom must be. A year has passed since then. Tom and I are enjoying a peaceful life, possibly because we've cut ties with Lynn. I can't help but think that being able to live such a happy life now is surely because we've ceased all contact with Lynn. In the end, by consistently turning her away, Lynn stopped coming to our house. We don't know where she is or what she's doing. Yet, the fact that I'm not worried at all is proof that my feelings have completely cooled off. Lately, our joy has been traveling together. Making up for the time lost to Lynn's drama, we cherish our moments together. We're even planning our next trip. Where will we go next? Maybe going abroad. With Tom, any destination promises joy. I thought this while flipping through a travel magazine nearby. Hey, it seems like the baby wants to say something, said my 8-year-old niece, glancing at my son's face. What? That's nonsense. Babies can't talk. My son laughed off what he thought was child's play. But my sister and I were startled and looked at my niece. The grandson blinked his big eyes several times and looked up at me and my sister as if he had something he wanted to convey. It's true, I can hear this child's voice. My niece insisted, tearfully staring at my son as if conveying the baby's words was her mission, even if my son mocked her. My son's wife watched this scene in astonishment. Then what is he saying? I'll listen, just for you, my son said with a condescending look. It wasn't a look one should give a small child. I swallowed hard, watching anxiously for what my niece would say next. My name is Tina. I am 50 years old, living with my husband and our beloved dog, Laura. Until 7 years ago, we lived with my son, Ken, and Laura, but after graduating from community college, Ken started working at a factory and moved out to live on his own. Ken was always rebellious, often not listening to what we said. No matter how much my strict husband warned him, he wouldn't listen, and there were times he got into trouble with the police. Each time, my husband and I would apologize repeatedly, sternly lecturing Ken. But it seemed neither the unpleasant experiences he caused others nor the police warnings bothered Ken, as he repeatedly got into similar troubles. As a child, he was like the neighborhood ringleader, bossing around his elementary school friends, which was still somewhat endearing. As he grew older, his delinquency escalated, causing injuries and troubles to others, leaving us, his parents, at our wits' end. We were worried about him until he graduated from community college. However, upon graduation, he landed a job at a company, and we were overjoyed, thinking Ken had finally turned into a decent person. Becoming a working adult, whether due to being busy or changing his ways, the calls from the police stopped. Living on his own, Ken seemed to have mended his ways. Finally, after years of difficult parenting, my husband and I congratulated each other. 2 years ago, Ken brought home the woman he wanted to marry, Lisa. At that time, Ken, at 25, was on the younger side for marriage, but we never thought the delinquent boy would ever get married, so we were overjoyed at his announcement. This is Lisa, the woman I'm gonna marry. Met her in town. Nice to meet you, I'm Lisa, said the woman Ken brought home, a slender beauty with a modest demeanor, stepping back behind Ken. I'm Tina, Ken's mother. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. It was a mystery why such a lady fell for Ken, but perhaps he had a charming side we hadn't seen. We're planning to get married next month, Ken reported lightly, but his usual confidence meant my husband and I didn't pry. If they had decided together, it wasn't our place to intervene. So, at work the other day, Ken quickly moved on the topic to ramble about his work. Most of it was boasting about how he had saved his workplace from crises or covered for his colleagues' misdemeanors. We half listened, but Lisa attentively nodded along the whole time. Indeed, if a woman listens to this well, it's understandable why Ken fell for her. Despite coming to report their marriage, Ken mostly talked about himself, impressing Lisa. In the end, Ken's marriage announcement turned out to be mostly him rambling on about whatever he wanted to talk about. When Ken went to the restroom, I couldn't help but ask Lisa if she was okay. Are you okay, Lisa? He talks mostly about himself. Oh, I'm used to it, so it's fine. Lisa reassured me, replied like that as if it was nothing. If there's anything, please always feel free to talk to us. We're family now. Thank you. Her eyes were slightly teary, which surprised me. Oh, sorry. Just some dust, Lisa said, wiping the corner of her eye. She might be experiencing the wedding blues. I remembered feeling choked up when I reported my marriage to my in-laws long ago. That day, I watched Lisa leave our house with a nostalgic feeling. To think Ken found such a wife, we can finally relax. Yeah, it's been a long journey, but we made it. We congratulated each other on the upbringing of our son, and that night, we celebrated with some fine wine, getting drunker than usual and going to bed early. 2 years had passed since Ken and Lisa got married, and this year, they had a baby boy. His name is Henry, and from the photos, he looks like Lisa with a well-defined face. The thing is, my husband and I haven't met our grandson yet. Even when we contacted Ken to let us see the grandson, he'd say, "I've been busy lately," or "Lisa doesn't like it," and hardly agreed. Initially, we refrained from visiting right after the birth to not burden Lisa, but after several months without approval from Ken, my husband and I decided to visit Ken and Lisa's home unannounced. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. Hello. Ken and Lisa lived in a rental property in the countryside, about a 40-minute drive from our house. Lisa opened the door. It's been a while. How are you? Seeing Lisa after a long time, she seemed to have a frightened expression for some reason. She appeared thinner than before. Or perhaps more accurately, gaunt. Sorry for the sudden visit. We just couldn't wait any longer to see our grandson. Is now a good time? Oh, yes. Please come in. Despite asking tentatively, thinking it might be a busy time, Lisa readily let us in. As soon as we entered, the smell of cigarettes hit our noses. My husband frowned. I was surprised, thinking, cigarette smell in a house with a baby? But didn't mention it and proceeded to the back of the room. Seeing our grandson sleeping in the baby crib in the living room, our cheeks relaxed. When we gently touched his small hand, he twitched but continued sleeping. He's adorable. Thank you, Lisa said with a tired face that slightly brightened. Is Ken not here today? He went out with friends today. Leaving you and Henry behind? It's usual for him. Usual must mean Ken often goes out on his days off. Is Ken helping with parenting? I smelled cigarettes. Is Ken smoking? Lisa just looked down without answering, affirming the situation, and I felt very sad. I'll talk to him. Tell him to help you out more. Please don't. Hearing her firm refusal, I was taken aback. Despite Lisa being so worn out from childcare and housework, I thought of warning Ken, but perhaps for Lisa, it's unwanted interference? Oh, no. I appreciate the thought, but he might think I complained. Oh. Lisa was worried that if I complained to Ken, it would be her who'd be blamed. But that would be tough on you, Lisa. I'm fine. So please don't say anything to him. With Lisa insisting so much, neither my husband nor I could say anything more. All right, but please talk to us if anything comes up. We want to help. Thank you. Actually, Lisa was raised in a single mother's home, and her mother is currently hospitalized due to illness. So, for Lisa, aside from Ken, my husband and I are the only family she can rely on. We wanted to help Lisa feel a bit more at ease. Afterward, as Lisa sporadically shared about Ken's sloppy lifestyle and his terrible attitude towards her, it pained us to hear. We hadn't known that Ken was being so awful to Lisa while we were not around. Although Lisa refused, we secretly resolved to warn Ken if he continued behaving terribly. A week after my husband and I visited Lisa, on a Saturday when my husband said he had to work, my sister Sarah and my 8-year-old niece Ivy came to visit. Sarah and I have been close since childhood, and even as adults, we often spend time together like this. But this time, it had been a while since we last met, about half a year since I saw my sister, Sarah. Sarah and her daughter, Ivy, came to our house, and first off, they petted our beloved dog, Laura. Ivy, who apparently doesn't usually interact with dogs, looked at Laura with curiosity as Sarah said, "Isn't she adorable?" To which Ivy solemnly nodded. Then, I served tea to Sarah and Ivy, and we caught up on each other's lives. Unlike me, a stay-at-home wife, Sarah works part-time and was venting about her boss. This must be one of the few times she can relieve her stress. I listened to Sarah's stories, nodding appropriately. During this, Ivy, who had been playing with Laura, suddenly turned to us and stared at me with her big eyes. "What's wrong, Ivy?" Then, Ivy started, as if she had something on her mind. "Laura says, thank you for always taking care of me. But she wants more frequent washes, not just once a month but maybe once a week." "Really?" I was baffled as Ivy began to express Laura's feelings. Looking at Sarah, she was just as surprised, saying, "Well, it's common for young children to pretend to converse with animals," but specifying the frequency of the baths was peculiar. Especially since it was accurate. "I've been wanting to give Laura more frequent baths, but I've been too busy lately." "Did Laura tell you that, Ivy?" "Yeah, she looked like she wanted to talk, so I asked her." At first, I thought Ivy was either lying or fantasizing. However, I was taken aback when Sarah mentioned, actually, this kind of thing happens quite often with her. Last time, despite the weather forecast predicting sunshine, she said a storm was coming and it'd be better to stay home. We had no plans that day, so we stayed in, and sure enough, the weather turned severe, just as Ivy said. Signs were even blown away outside. I was glad we didn't go out. "Really?" And there's more. She found my car keys right away when I lost them and talked with dogs we met while walking, just like now. No one believes it, but I've come to realize this child has a special gift. Sarah continued, patting Ivy's head. If what Sarah said was true, I too had to believe Ivy had some unique ability. Despite finding it unbelievable, witnessing this power firsthand left me no choice but to believe. Ivy, having relayed Laura's feelings, went back to playing with her as usual. "And how about you? How have things been lately?" Sarah turned to ask me as I recalled last week's events while watching Ivy. "Actually, I met my grandson for the first time the other day." I began, sharing everything I saw at Ken and Lisa's house. How Ken left his wife and child at home to hang out alone on Sunday, his smoking habit, and his domineering attitude towards Lisa. With each detail I shared, Sarah's brows furrowed more and more. "That's terrible. Ken has always been a handful, but I thought he had gotten better recently." "Yes, but it seems I was mistaken. It's just not right for Lisa." "Indeed, and worrying. How about we go visit Lisa together next time? Maybe we can help somehow. Of course, we'll let her know beforehand." "All right, I'll ask her." The following weekend, Sarah, Ivy, and I visited Ken and Lisa's house again. After notifying Lisa in advance, it turned out Ken was out again, which was just as well. However, I couldn't help but disapprove of Ken leaving his family alone almost every weekend. "Hello, Lisa. Sorry for visiting again." "It's okay. It's just me and the baby, so any time is fine." "Hello." Sarah and Ivy greeted Lisa for the first time in 2 years since we last met as extended family. Ivy rushed over to the crib where my grandson was lying, gently stroking his head. She seemed to like the baby. As we watched Ivy, we sat down at the dining table. Lisa looked even more exhausted from childcare and housework than before, prompting concerned looks from Sarah. "Has Ken's behavior changed since then?" "It hasn't changed. When I try to go out, he yells at me to stay in the house, and he does whatever he wants, like drinking and smoking. If I even slightly resist, he says, 'Who do you think is earning the bread for you guys?'" Lisa shared, tears brimming in her eyes as she spoke about her daily life. Sarah offered Lisa a handkerchief. "Are you okay? I can't believe it. Makes me want to do something about it." I was so angry at Ken's appalling behavior that I couldn't stand it. "It would be nice if we could find something on him, something that could get the police involved," Sarah muttered. Hearing this, Lisa gasped. "It's not about the police, but lately, we've had debt collectors come to our house. Since my husband wasn't home, I told them they must have the wrong person, but they said, 'This is Ken's house, right?'" "Really? That happened? It's hard to ask, but Lisa, do you have debts?" "No, I have no idea about any debts." This house is rented, and we don't have any loans. Sarah and I exchanged looks, wondering what was going on. Was Ken in debt without Lisa knowing, unable to pay it back? While we were swirling with questions and searching for the right words to respond. What a loss today, just my luck. We heard Ken's voice as the front door was roughly opened. Everyone's face froze as we heard Ken's voice. Huh? Why is Mom here? Ken glared at me, reminding me of his rebellious and delinquent days. I'm sorry for intruding unannounced. But I was worried about Lisa. Ken was startled not only by my presence but also by his aunt and cousin being there. However, realizing it was just family, he demanded Lisa to bring him some alcohol. Lisa hurried to the kitchen. There's no more beer left. What? That's your job as a wife to restock. I'm sorry. Ken retorted arrogantly, as if he were a king, and Lisa shrunk in response, apologizing. I couldn't help but shout, Ken, but he didn't even glance at me, just glared at Lisa. Looking for a way to reprimand Ken, the baby in the crib began to cry. Lisa looked startled and started to move towards the baby, but Ken's fierce glare stopped her in her tracks. Sarah and I exchanged looks, trying to communicate silently about what to do next. That's when Ivy spoke up. Hey, the baby seems to have something to say. Ivy said this while glancing at Ken's face. What? That's nonsense. Babies can't talk. Ken laughed off what he thought was just child's play. But Sarah and I turned to look at Ivy's face in astonishment. The grandchild blinked his big eyes several times, looking up at us as if he had something he wanted to say. It's not a lie, I can hear this child's voice. Ivy insisted, undeterred by being ridiculed by Ken. Tears welling up in her eyes as she stared at him. Lisa watched in astonishment. Then what is he saying? I'll listen, just for you. Ken said with a disdainful look that should never be directed at a small child. I watched, holding my breath, as Ivy was about to speak next. Daddy is planning something bad. Mommy, don't be fooled. For a moment, Ken's shoulder twitched at Ivy's words. Lisa looked shocked. Sarah and I immediately understood that Ivy was about to use her mysterious ability again. What do you mean, Ivy? I urged her to elaborate. Ivy took a breath before continuing. Daddy has been writing secrets in a notebook and always hides it behind the bookshelf. Also, I love Mommy. Daddy is scary, and he's crying. Then Ivy walked over to the living room's bookshelf, pulled out a few books, and found a small notebook hidden behind them, handing it to Sarah. Here it is. Seeing the small notebook, Ken's face turned pale. Sarah, gauging the reactions of Ken and Lisa, opened the notebook. This is a life insurance policy. Oh, the insured is Lisa, and Ken is the beneficiary. There's even a contract attached. Now Lisa's face turned pale, and I took the notebook from Sarah to see for myself. As Sarah said, there was a life insurance policy worth over $200,000 taken out on Lisa, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Ken, what's this all about? I never thought my son, who had a history of delinquency, could do something so cruel to his own wife. I glared at him, wanting to confront him about this life insurance right away. Damn, I had no choice. I ran out of money. Besides, anyone would get life insurance, right? It's not like I was planning to do anything to Lisa. Ken rattled off excuses as if trying to justify himself. The fact he mentioned not having money was corroborated by the debt story I heard from Lisa. It was clear where the money had gone, considering how he leaves his wife and child to hang out every day. Probably wasted it on some frivolous activities. Insurance is usually something you get for yourself, right? Taking out a life insurance policy on Lisa without her knowing and acting ignorant about it is just wrong. My logical point left Ken at a loss for words. Then, Ivy spoke up again, adding fuel to the fire. The baby told me. Daddy's been mumbling to himself that he got fired from his job for stealing money from the company. And he's planning to do something bad to Mommy to get money. What? I exclaimed, shocked by her words. Fired from his job? Then what had he been doing all this time during weekdays? Lisa, too, stared at Ken in disbelief. What are you talking about? You don't have any proof. Ken spat back at Ivy. I stepped in front of Ivy, unleashing all the anger I had been holding back. Proof? Ivy just told you everything. She can understand the baby's words, not just that. Finding this notebook wasn't a coincidence either. What Ivy says is true. You've seen the life insurance policy with your own eyes. Stop making excuses and apologize to Lisa. I scolded Ken more fiercely than ever. Heartbroken to know my son could attempt such a terrible thing against his wife. Ken, who had boasted about covering for his subordinates' misconduct, was actually the one causing trouble. It was disheartening and made me feel nauseous to think my own son could sink so low. What the hell? Ken ruffled his hair, twisting his face in frustration. But it was all his own doing. No one felt sympathy for him. After I scolded Ken, Lisa seemed to gather some courage and finally spoke up. I never imagined you could do something so despicable. I want nothing to do with you anymore. Pay back the debt yourself. Goodbye. With those words, Lisa took the baby and stormed out of the house. We watched in astonishment. Ken muttered complaints after Lisa left, but after being rebuked by Sarah and me, he ended up sulking. Though it was unexpected for Lisa to leave, I was glad we could expose Ken's wrongdoing. Looking at Ivy, who seemed content after speaking her mind, she stretched and said, I'm hungry. Shall we go get something to eat? Well, we'll be taking our leave now. With that, Sarah, Ivy, and I left Ken's house behind. A place that could be visited by debt collectors at any moment. I decided never to return to this house again, not just for Lisa's sake. Why the hell? Ken was still shouting until we closed the door, but we ignored his pathetic cries and left the building. A few days later, worried about Lisa, I contacted her. I'm sorry to have worried you. I've gone back to my grandmother's house. Please feel free to visit Henry anytime, she assured me, which relieved me. Lisa had sent Ken divorce papers right after that incident. Ken was reluctant to agree to the divorce at first, but after Lisa insisted she would not let him see the child unless they divorced, he finally gave in, and the divorce was settled. Lisa, whose mother is hospitalized, said she's back at her grandparents' seeking employment and plans to place Henry in daycare soon. Ken's miserable days began, forced to work part-time daily to repay his debts. Initially, he begged my husband for money, but after hearing the full story, my husband was furious and told him, don't ever come back home. Thankfully, that meant Ken no longer sought help from us. I don't feel sorry for him. He brought this upon himself. Now, I occasionally visit Lisa and her grandparents' house to play with Henry. Despite everything that happened because of Ken, Lisa and her family have warmly welcomed Sarah, Ivy, and me. Ivy, do you know what Henry just said? Yeah. I'm happy I can play with Mommy and Grandma. Really? That's great. Lisa was just impressed by Ken. She's actually a kind and polite, wonderful person. That's why she still treats us without any discrimination. For me, that was enough. Oh no! I'm gonna call an ambulance. I reached for my phone as my oldest son's wife, Julie, collapsed from her chair right in front of me. She started screaming in pain, curling up in a fetal position. Just as I was about to dial, my young grandchild stopped me. Grandma, you don't need to call. Hearing the reason why my grandchild stopped me drained the color from my face. My grandchild knew all about the unbelievable plan. My name is Lisa, and I'm a 54-year-old web designer. My husband, who works for a major trading company, has been stationed in France for the past 9 years. He comes back home for emergencies and important occasions, but mostly he doesn't return. We both love our jobs, so I have no complaints about him not being around. My job, simply put, can be done from anywhere as long as I have a computer. We considered moving to France together when my husband got his assignment there, but we decided against it for a reason. Right around the time his assignment was confirmed, my oldest son and his wife were expecting a child. We've been living with my oldest son and his wife since they got married. Julie's parents live far away, and it seems her brother and his wife live with them. Julie's delivery was expected to be around the same time as her sister-in-law's, making it difficult for her to have her baby back home. This child would be my first grandchild. And with me working from home, I thought I could provide support for Julie during her first pregnancy. My husband agreed it was best for me to stay. My son, Tom, after graduating from a vocational school, works at a local auto repair shop. Julie took a short break from her part-time job before and after giving birth but returned to work quite early. She now works part-time at a nearby cafe. I still remember what Julie told me shortly after we started living together. "Since you work from home, I'll leave the housework to you," she said with a bright smile. Sure, I work from home, but that doesn't mean I have a lot of free time. Julie only works part-time either in the morning or afternoon. She clearly has more time to manage household chores. Yet, she acted as if it was natural to neglect her share of the chores. In the end, the household duties remained divided between my husband and me, just as they were before we started living with my oldest son and his wife. When you live with more people, of course, the household chores double. My oldest son and his wife, Julie, acted as if they were guests, not lifting a finger around the house. It was all very convenient for them. Meanwhile, my husband and I struggled with the increased workload, busier than ever before. And now, all the household responsibilities have fallen squarely on my shoulders. I was overjoyed when my first grandchild, Natalie, was born. My husband had to go abroad soon after, so he was a bit sad, but it couldn't be helped. Natalie was incredibly cute from the moment she was a baby. And now she's 9 years old. 9 years old is such a sassy and adorable age for a girl. Natalie has grown into just such a cheeky little girl. However, Julie seemed disinterested in Natalie right from when she was a baby. Julie has always said she's not good with kids, so I was worried about leaving her in charge of raising Natalie. In the end, since I work from home, I ended up taking care of Natalie as well. Julie probably changed Natalie's diapers the least in the family. She only showed affection when it suited her, neglecting all other aspects of care. It was cherry-picking parenting at its finest. I think Natalie was about 3 years old at the time. I was incredibly busy with work. It was what you'd call a peak season. For me, working freelance, missing a deadline could spell disaster. I was frazzled, trying to juggle work, housekeeping, and childcare. But such a pace couldn't last, and one day, I collapsed from overwork. Lying exhausted on the living room sofa, Julie's words upon returning from her part-time job were shocking. "Please go pick up Natalie from daycare. This is no time to be lounging around. You haven't even done the laundry yet. I can't believe you're just lying there without doing any housework." At that moment, my face must have been as pale as a ghost. Tom came home just 5 minutes after Julie and, seeing my condition, hurriedly called the hospital. I will never forget the words Julie said to me when I was clearly unwell. Reluctantly, after Tom suggested it, Julie went to pick up Natalie, but not before giving me a disdainful click of her tongue. I'll never forget that either. Tom took me to the hospital where I was diagnosed with exhaustion and ended up staying the night. Going home meant returning to chores. So Tom suggested I stay in the hospital so I could actually rest. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in ages. I must have been truly exhausted. Though I recovered physically, I had fallen behind on several work projects. Frustrated, I focused even harder on my work. And I made it clear to Julie that I wanted her to share in the household duties. It was probably because Tom was listening. Julie unusually agreed with a seemingly earnest attitude. However, her words never turned into action. She started to help with the chores a bit, but essentially, I was still the one managing the household. I had to remind myself that not everything can improve at once. Or else I felt like I might snap at Julie. Thinking of living with my oldest son and his wife as a test of my patience made things a bit easier to bear. As Natalie grew, I noticed Julie was quite vain. Before parent-teacher meetings, she always bought new clothes. While I could somewhat understand if it were Natalie's clothes, Julie only bought for herself. Natalie is now at an age where she wants to dress up too. But she is left out. Always wearing hand-me-downs or thrift store finds. Julie seemed to be deceiving Tom about her spending. She showed off Natalie's thrifted clothes as if they were a bargain. Then flaunting her own new clothes as if they were thrift store treasures too. She's quite cunning. I prefer not to meddle too much in my son and his wife's affairs, so I never commented on this. All I could do was take Natalie shopping for new clothes each season. Seeing Natalie's happy face became my joy. I believe this is how a bond stronger than just grandmother and granddaughter formed between Natalie and me. Please don't spoil Natalie too much, mother-in-law. Buying her too many things isn't good for her education. If you're going to buy something for Natalie, buy it for me instead. When Natalie and I came back from shopping for clothes, Julie was waiting for us, fidgeting irritably. Natalie shrank back, hiding behind me. Julie, you buy plenty for yourself. And it's not like we're spoiling her, we're just replacing clothes that she's outgrown each season. I was so taken aback by Julie's attitude. I had been feeling that Julie's spending had been getting out of control lately. Probably because she's trying to keep up with her friends. Many of whom are doctors' wives or daughters of company presidents, and started wearing more brand name items. I understand the desire to show off, but there's such a thing as living within your means. I've kept quiet, but don't you think you've been a bit reckless with money lately, Julie? I know you want to keep up with your friends, but Tom's salary can only stretch so far. Do you realize how much Natalie's education is going to cost as she gets older? I had reached my limit. It was unfair to Natalie, who must feel wronged. She's at an age where she wants to dress up. That should be understood by her mother, but Julie prioritizes herself. It's like she lacks maternal awareness. Julie, you're a mother. Please be a role model for Natalie. Julie's face turned red in a flash, as if my words hit a nerve. She seemed to want to retort but couldn't find the words, just grinding her teeth in frustration. It must be frustrating for her to be hit so close to home. I hope she takes this as an opportunity to reflect on her life. I hoped this would make her reflect on her lifestyle. But then things started to change. Mom, are you feeling all right? You look pale. Are you overworking again? You're not getting any younger, you know. Tom asked me at breakfast. It had been years since I could sit down to a meal. Since I spoke up, Julie began to take on more household duties. She hasn't done much with laundry or cleaning, but she's decided to take charge of the meals. From breakfast to dinner, Julie has been preparing all the meals lately. Really? I haven't taken on more work, and Julie has been helping with the chores lately, so I should be feeling lighter. But I just feel so sluggish. Maybe it's my age. Lately, my health has been surprisingly poor. I wake up feeling so sluggish it takes me a while to get out of bed. Just a little movement makes me dizzy, and my head is constantly in a fog. It feels different from when I collapsed from overwork before. Are you okay? I'll make something easy to digest for lunch, Julie says with a cheerful voice. But without any real concern. It almost feels like she enjoys seeing me suffer. Thinking that makes me feel ashamed of myself. For trying to blame my condition on someone else. Julie has been trying to change for the better. I need to respond to that effort. Thank you. Your cooking is always so thoughtful and delicious. I'm looking forward to lunch, I managed to say with a smile. However, Julie's cooking has a unique taste to it. Honestly, it's pretty bad, although I always eat it saying it's delicious. Tom and Natalie seem to eat it without complaint, so maybe it's just my taste that's off. After all, it's hard to believe Natalie would find something unpalatable to be tasty. Perhaps this is all due to my poor health. After eating the udon soup Julie made for lunch, I felt so unwell I had to stop working and rest in my room. I'm too dizzy to walk straight to the hospital. Could there be a serious illness hiding? The more I think about it, the more anxious I become, unable to sleep. Mother-in-law, are you okay? I thought maybe something warm to drink might help you feel a bit better. Julie says, bringing in a tray with hot milk. The Julie of the past would never have made such a gesture. If she had shown such remorse and changed her behavior earlier, I would have spoken up sooner. The mug emits a gentle steam. I added a little sugar and vanilla to make it easier to drink. Sniffing the aroma, I indeed notice a sweet scent different from regular hot milk. Thank you, I'll have some. I said as Julie watched me drink the hot milk intently. Almost as if she was observing to make sure I drank it all, which felt a bit uncomfortable. The hot milk was sweet and tasty, but it left a strange, bitter aftertaste. Thanks, it was delicious. I appreciate it, Julie. I said as I handed her the empty mug. That's when I noticed something gritty at the bottom of the mug. As I squinted to see what it was, Julie, noticing my attention, quickly hid the mug behind her. Well, please rest up. I'll think of something easy to eat for dinner. You need to eat well to regain your strength since health is your wealth. Julie said with encouraging words before leaving the room. I felt my dizziness worsen and closed my eyes gently. Even with my eyes shut, it felt like the ceiling was spinning. I couldn't help but worry about when my health would return to normal. I decided to take a taxi to the hospital tomorrow. Grandma, are you okay? The next thing I knew, it was already evening when I woke up. Natalie, who had returned from school, was peering at me with concern. Ah, Natalie, welcome back. Did you have fun at school today? Natalie nodded happily at my words. Yes. Just as she was about to say something, the door opened and Julie appeared. Natalie swallowed her words upon seeing Julie. She looked a bit scared of her. Dinner will be ready soon. You have to eat, even if you're not feeling well. Julie said, urging me towards the dining table. All right. I replied and got up. That's when Natalie tightly grabbed my hand. She seemed to want to say something but couldn't with Julie present. Julie, sensing this, didn't move at all. Reluctantly, I led the way to the dining room where dinner was ready. A delicious-looking menu was prepared for tonight. But for me, it was a painful task. It's not Julie's fault. My taste has just gotten a bit weird. Please eat a lot. She says as she offers the simmered ground pork over radish. The silky meat sauce on the pure white radish looks perfect. I proceed to eat, thinking it must really be delicious. And I was surprised. It was truly delicious. Julie, this is really good. I say, feeling happy with the taste for the first time in a while, and start reaching for other dishes. They all taste delicious, and I'm relieved to feel my sense of taste returning. I excitedly tell Natalie how delicious it is. Natalie looks tense for some reason. Just as I'm about to ask her if something happened, Julie, standing in front of me, collapses from her chair. Julie! What's wrong? Are you okay? Julie starts moaning on the floor, with sweat beading on her forehead. This is serious. I'm gonna call an ambulance. I reach for my smartphone in shock. But Natalie gently stops me. Grandma, you don't need to call. She says with a serious look. Despite her mother suffering, she says not to call an ambulance. What? I reply, dumbfounded. Because Mom did something bad. She put something weird in your food. I switched them. I switched Mom's dish with yours. Natalie says with tears in her eyes, desperately explaining. Shocked, I hesitantly taste a bit of Julie's dish on my tongue. It was unbelievably terrible and my tongue felt numb even from just a little taste. I immediately suspected something was off. But I couldn't just leave Julie suffering. Natalie, thank you. You saved me. Let's take your mom to the hospital now. We can talk about this later. Saying that, Natalie nodded solemnly and handed me my phone. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Julie was taken to the hospital. Watching Julie suffer in the ambulance, I shuddered at the thought that it could have been me if Natalie hadn't been so quick-witted. I felt nothing but gratitude towards her. After receiving stomach washing and an 4-drip, Julie seemed to calm down a bit. The doctor explained that it appeared some medication had been mixed into our dinner. A little bit wouldn't have been an issue, but the combination or a large amount could be dangerous. This time, traces of a drug that should never be mixed were found. When I mentioned my ongoing poor health, the doctor immediately ordered a blood test. The results were shocking, indicating long-term consumption of the medication found in Julie's stomach. It made sense to me then. My taste wasn't off. Julie had been adding medication to my food for a long time. Probably slower to affect me than she anticipated. Today, it seems she added a large amount, including a dangerous combination. Maybe she intended to finish things today. Regardless, it was a terrifying thought. I told Tom everything once he arrived at the hospital, asking the doctor to explain the medication part since I couldn't do it well. Tom was understandably shocked. He might not be able to believe his wife had been trying to harm his mother. He stood frozen in the hallway, and Natalie, hugging him, said in her young voice, "Dad, it's not your fault." Tom, holding Natalie tightly, apologized tearfully. I thought he was sorry for the past and likely for what was to come. The next morning was when I was finally able to speak with a somewhat recovered Julie. When I stood by the bed, Julie glared at me. "It doesn't seem like you think this is your own fault, given that attitude." I sighed, appalled by Julie's demeanor. "Why are you still up and about? Are you unusually sturdy or something?" Julie retorted sharply, even while lying in bed. "What was so unsatisfying for you? Was I in your way? Well, you can rest easy. By the time you're discharged, we won't have to see each other again." At my words, Julie's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" "This is from Tom. He said he can't stand to look at your face anymore." I explained, unfolding a green document in front of her. It was a divorce paper, signed by Tom. Julie's eyes widened in shock as she stared at the divorce paper. She probably never thought Tom would suggest divorce. Tom had always been on Julie's side, because I had advised him to support his wife over his mother if any conflict arose. I've also had my share of struggles with mother-in-law issues. I knew the struggles of being a daughter-in-law all too well. Tom understood my perspective correctly. But this incident was beyond any regular family dispute. It was life-threatening. Tom had made his decision. Lies. Tom wouldn't leave me. What have you told him? You should have just died. Julie yelled, still lacking the strength to move on her own. The medication she had administered must have been potent. Even Natalie always takes your side. Such a disloyal daughter, not helping her mother. Despite everything I told her, she betrayed me. I shouldn't have had her. Julie's harsh words were too much for me. I could tolerate her bad-mouthing me, but I couldn't believe she would slander her own flesh and blood. It was a relief Natalie wasn't here to hear this. So, you don't think all this is your own doing? You have no intention of reflecting on your actions. Do you even know what reflection means? I felt utter contempt for Julie. Struggling in frustration, Julie couldn't move freely yet. She probably wanted to grab me. Here's a business card for a lawyer. When you can move your hand, sign the divorce papers and send them to the lawyer right away. If you don't agree, I'll go to the police and tell them everything. Even if it doesn't get to the police, I'll reveal everything if it goes to court. I left her hospital room after saying that. As soon as I closed the door, I heard Julie yelling, "Witch!" It sounded like the howling of a defeated dog to me. A smile naturally came to my lips. I felt surprisingly refreshed. Later, Julie signed the divorce papers and mailed them to the lawyer as if she had resigned herself to the situation. Tom immediately filed them at the city hall. They were officially divorced and became strangers. At that time, Julie was still hospitalized, and her parents had come to visit her from afar. Hearing about the divorce, Julie's parents were furious and stormed into our house. Tom and I explained everything, showing the medical reports to Julie's incredulous parents. They seemed convinced after seeing the documents and deeply apologized at the end, repeatedly thanking us for handling the situation quietly, making us feel almost embarrassed for their gratitude. There was no apology from Julie. However, she kept calling Tom's phone, saying, "I want to see you." Tom has continued to ignore her, wanting nothing to do with her. The custody of Natalie went to Tom. Julie's hospitalization lasted longer than expected, and I heard she still has some paralysis. She's supposed to live with her parents in the countryside for a while. Her return home as a divorced woman has made her the talk of the neighborhood. It didn't take long for the details of the divorce to spread. Julie became known locally as the failed wife who tried to poison her mother-in-law and was sent back to her parents' home. The paralysis serves as proof of the rumors, and she can hardly go outside. Locked in her room with the shutters closed, she remains in the dark. She still muttered curses about me. It's just frustrating that Julie doesn't realize sooner that this situation is entirely of her own making. My health improved quickly after I stopped eating Julie's meals. The medication prescribed by the doctor to neutralize the drugs must have worked well. I also believe that the absence of stress has accelerated my recovery. I was worried that Natalie might be depressed about her parents' divorce, but she has become even brighter and more active than before. Julie's presence must have been somewhat stifling for her. It's heartening to think she's returned to her true self. My husband will be returning from France next spring. Natalie seems to be eagerly awaiting the reunion with her grandfather, whom she hasn't seen for a while. When my husband returns, it will be much more lively. I want to quickly forget the unpleasant memories and focus on creating a joyful future. Being able to watch Natalie grow up is the greatest happiness I could ask for. It was supposed to be our first trip in a long time, but I had to cancel because of some urgent work. I'll make it up to you later, I promise. Today was the day we had reserved to go to a luxury hotel as a couple's trip. Shaken by the call from Tom, I asked him why. But he was clearly acting strange and dodging the question. Thinking something must have happened, I immediately called our daughter Holly. "So it's true then." "All right, I'll handle it from here." "Mom, just stay put at home. I'll get ready and head over soon." "Okay, I'll be waiting." I've always felt something off about Tom's behavior. Tom, who had been strange since before he became the CEO in his early 30s. The distrust isn't easy to shake off, though it's natural for him to be at the company as its CEO. I called Tom again, urging him to come home soon. When Tom returned home in the morning, he apologized. What a foolish man. I thought to myself, then said, "Oh. Why don't you take a look behind you?" The moment Tom turned around and saw me and the person next to me, he went pale. My name is Juliana, a 45-year-old homemaker. Until 2 years ago, it was just my husband, our daughter, and me living together, but recently, Holly got married. Now that she's working, Holly and her husband live together, and it's just Tom and me at home. Thanks to Tom running a well-known company since his early 30s, we had no financial troubles when Holly was young. We used to go on trips often, just the three of us. Holly looked forward to these trips so much that she would make sure Tom made the reservations properly. Tom took care of all the payments for the hotel reservations. Even when I offered to pay, Tom insisted on doing it himself. We thanked each other and must have looked like a loving couple to anyone. I never forgot to be grateful, and I managed our finances well. But this story dates back to when Holly was a child. As Holly entered middle school, Tom's behavior began to change gradually. When I went to pick Holly up and returned home, Tom, who should have been there, was nowhere to be found. I tried calling him several times, but he never picked up. Sometimes, when he did come home, he would just play with his smartphone and fall asleep on the couch. And that's not all. He stopped contributing money to the household, which he had always done before. When Holly wanted to have a wedding ceremony, Tom dismissed it with a displeased look. When she mentioned wanting children, Tom negated it, assuming future hardships. We, as her parents, should have wanted to support her. But Tom wouldn't listen to Holly's opinions and just imposed his own, arms crossed. "You're young, you and your husband should be able to cover it."
What's with that attitude? That's so unfair to Holly.
Just because they're young doesn't mean they can easily afford it. I stood up for Holly. But Tom just sneered with a snort, arms crossed. "It's the truth, isn't it? She should be supporting us after all we've done to raise her."
Not supporting her is just wrong, don't you think?
My anger made no difference to Tom's opinion. Why all the negativity? The Tom I knew wouldn't have said such things. He used to be so supportive, even when Holly was born. When Holly was a baby, he said childcare should come before work. Maybe it was because many around us became stay-at-home moms, but Tom was kind not just to me but to Holly as well. Even with his busy job, he always came home to see Holly's sleeping face, finding solace in it. He prioritized love above all else, but what changed him? Just thinking about it gives me a headache, so I turned to exercising as a hobby for physical and mental relief. Tom's negativity shocked Holly. Speaking of the person in question, there were many times he hardly came home at all. During such a time, I got a call from Holly. "Sorry, Mom. I don't want Dad to know, but I'm pregnant. I can't come home anymore, so I thought I'd tell you in advance." "That's so, I'm relieved. I was afraid you had given up because of what your father said." "Not at all. I've always said I wanted kids. I'll raise them right."
Yeah, okay. Do your best, Holly. But don't overdo it, okay? Rely on others sometimes.
Holly sounded happy as she replied, "Got it." I strongly felt that this was something I couldn't tell Tom. I thought it best to say nothing when he came back and just act as usual. Months passed since Tom stopped coming home. Then, I received a message from Holly with a photo attached. It was to announce the birth of her child. A cute child, looking just like Holly, appeared on the screen. How adorable. I'm so glad. Glad that mother and child are safe. As I was tearing up over these thoughts, Tom snatched my smartphone with a threatening tone. "Having kids, huh?
How can you say such horrible things? To your own daughter, no less. Isn't your grandchild precious to you? Give me back my phone."
"No way. I thought you and Holly were up to something, and it turns out I was right. Don't expect me to approve of her getting married now." Tom, who had just come back suddenly, began to deny Holly's personal life. I didn't understand why he was so stubborn, and I argued back.
No parent doesn't support their own child. Maybe you should reconsider your position?
And when exactly were you planning to work, being a homemaker all this time? I don't want to hear it from someone who hasn't lifted a finger even after her daughter became an adult. That stung. I was a homemaker because I was raising our child. I admit there's some truth to his point, but I still intend to stand by Holly. It's a fact that I couldn't stand Tom just complaining and then heading off to work without coming home properly. Being in my 40s, finding a job wasn't going to be easy. After discussing with Holly, I learned that upskilling is a trend in the job market these days. So, I decided to upgrade my skills to get a job. With the help of online courses, I finally acquired some skills. With Holly's support, I managed to start working from home after a long time. Tom made a strange face when he saw me working as usual. He seemed shocked, thinking I was still just a homemaker. I had never seen that expression on him before, and I couldn't help but laugh. "This is good, right?" "Yeah, I guess. I never thought you'd actually work, so I'm surprised." Despite his criticism of not working, he still looked down on me. Why can he only speak in such a demeaning way? Just as I was about to retort, Tom made a suggestion.
If you're working now, that means we can afford to stay at a luxury hotel.
What is he talking about now? A luxury hotel, the one we talked about going to when we were newlyweds and hadn't been married long? Back then, traveling was my hobby. I had stayed in all the local hotels and wanted to go somewhere new. That's when we found out Holly was on the way, and I said I wanted to prioritize parenting. Since prioritizing parenting, the three of us never went together. My routine was housework, Tom was the CEO of a well-known company, and Holly went to school. I had forgotten for a while, but I finally remembered. Truth be told, I still want to go on a trip. I wanted a couple's trip at some point, so I'm honestly very happy. But seeing Tom's attitude now, I wonder if it's okay to go together. I had thought we could enjoy some good times as a couple, but even now, things are awkward. I decided to try making a suggestion to Tom. Just in case he had any objections, I wanted to leave the decision up to him.
Want to go together? Don't you think it'd be nice for us to have some time together as a couple after so long? But what about the money? I can't prepare it right away, you know.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Right, Tom is the CEO of a well-known company. I was so caught up in how poorly Tom was treating Holly, but he remembered the time we went on our honeymoon. Feeling excited inside, I decided to start preparing a week before the reservation date. It seemed like money wouldn't be a concern, but just in case, I decided to bring the money I earned from working from home. Then, on the day we were supposed to go to the luxury hotel, Tom called to say he suddenly had to work.
It was supposed to be our first trip in a long time, but I have to cancel because of some urgent work. I'll make it up to you later, I promise.
I was looking forward to it, but then Tom canceled on the day of the reservation. As I roughly pulled clothes out of the neatly packed carry-on bag, tears of frustration overflowed. Does he think he can just blame everything on work? Asking Tom for a reason only leads to him dodging the question, never consulting with me.
I was looking forward to it, really, I don't understand that man.
I muttered to myself and then cried out loud. After a while, I managed to compose myself. It's all right. I want more than just a marriage in name, I want a real relationship. I'll stop expecting us to be a cooperative couple. I called Holly's phone. Then, I heard Ken's voice over the phone. Holly and Ken were talking about something, but I couldn't make out the details. However, it seemed like Holly was panicking, and Ken was trying to keep calm, almost like they were arguing. It must be about that issue. It seemed like the result of a request I had made to Holly, and Ken was ready. And they said they needed to come over to our house urgently, as it required both Tom and me to be present. Before Holly and Ken arrived, I tried calling Tom's phone. As expected, it went straight to voicemail. Hearing the familiar voicemail message made me even more irritated. After calling several times, I finally got through to Tom. Today is Sunday. He left the house early in the morning and hadn't returned by the evening. Common reasons for divorce include debts or affairs. Despite a bad feeling, I questioned Tom.
Today, Holly is coming over. Please come home soon. There's something important I need to talk to you about.
Important talk?
Wait, didn't I tell you I had urgent work and had to cancel the trip to the luxury hotel?
Tom laughed as if he had the upper hand. It's hard to believe that a company with weekends off would work on Sunday. Especially when it's known as a good company. Implying good work-life balance. But listening to Tom's explanation, you'd think the company wasn't so good after all. I decided to share the information Ken had dug up about Tom.
I've heard, but that's not the point. I was wondering if maybe you've gotten into debt. Debt? What are you basing that on? I don't understand.
From your reaction, it seems true. If you don't come back, I'll throw away all your stuff. That's my offer. His voice was trembling. But after hearing what Holly and Ken had found, I didn't want to believe it. Yet, Tom's actions and the word debt seemed to connect correctly. It's natural for a wife to not want to believe such things.
Don't throw away my stuff, please.
No.
If you don't face this, I'm considering divorce. Wait, okay. I'll apologize, just give me some time. I won't accept just an apology, show me through your actions. I'll be waiting at home.
I hung up the phone, feeling my body shaking. It's always painful to be on the receiving end of unpleasant words, to always be the one to tolerate. Exhausted, I sat down at the entrance. Tom's company is supposed to have weekends off. And being the CEO, there shouldn't be any financial issues. Perhaps something was wrong between us as a couple. Even with these feelings, it wasn't my choice to live like this with Tom. As I was thinking this, Holly arrived. Seeing me sitting at the entrance, Holly looked worriedly at me.
Mom, are you okay? Ken is here too. He's smarter than me, so when Dad arrives, let's get everything out in the open.
Yeah. Sorry for showing you such a pathetic sight.
Don't worry about it, it's okay. Plus, today, I was really hoping to eat your cooking, Mom. Do you think you're up for it? Can I help?
Holly was considerate, offering to take over household chores for me. Becoming a mother, Holly. Oh, how desperately I lived as a mother. There were times I was so focused I couldn't see anything else, but I understand it was all to protect my child. For now, we prioritized cooking dinner together. I figured Tom would come back late at night or in the morning. While preparing dinner with Holly, I realized Ken hadn't shown up at all.
Where's Ken? Ken said he'd wait outside because of Dad's issue. Plus, he didn't want to leave the kids alone, so he dropped them off at his parents' and then he's waiting in the car. Right, it's dangerous to leave a child alone. Yeah. Plus, we don't want to expose them to our parents' arguments, right? Ken and I want to live in peace.
I was struck by her words, and Holly gave me a reassuring smile. Parents' arguments. Holly must have endured her share too. It made me feel complicated. Then, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a message from Tom, saying he'd be back tomorrow morning.
I'll let Ken know. We should get ready too. Me too. But how about we all have a light meal first? Good idea.
Until Tom arrived, Holly, Ken, and I gathered to eat together. Ken apologized for being late in greeting us. He was so considerate, it warmed my heart. Seeing the dishes on the table, Ken looked surprised. When I asked why, he laughed joyfully, saying my cooking was too gourmet for him.
And to think, a husband who doesn't eat these delicious meals every day, that's kind of sad, isn't it? I'm used to it, I guess. As long as Holly and you visit occasionally, that's enough for me. That's good to hear. I feel ready to face your husband head on.
We've turned a blind eye to things. Thanks in advance for tomorrow morning, both of you, I said, and Holly and Ken replied in unison, yes. They looked at each other and burst into laughter. It's nice, their closeness. Honestly, I'm so envious of their relationship, it's almost jealousy. But the main issue is Tom's true intentions. The fact that the word debt shook him proves my intuition was right. And the information Holly and Ken gathered was accurate. That fact alone stuck in my mind, making me sad. After dinner and cleaning up, we held a strategy meeting for the next morning. To make sure everything went smoothly. To ensure Tom couldn't make excuses. I hated that Tom always wanted to appear as the good guy while staying safe himself. After the meeting, we decided to sleep in the same room. Waking up, I saw a message from Tom saying he'd be home soon. I shared the news with Holly and Ken, and we took our places as planned. I knew this wouldn't be the end, but the effort we put in was real. I have no regrets about ending our marital relationship. Yet, I couldn't help thinking if there was something more I could have done. If I had acted sooner, maybe we wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble. I would have blamed myself if not for Holly and Ken's comforting presence. I felt pathetic as both a parent and an individual. As I was lost in thought, Tom barged in. He immediately apologized loudly enough for the neighbors to hear.
I'm sorry, Juliana. I'll book a luxury hotel again, let's go together.
It must have been his way of thinking. Unfortunately, it didn't resonate with me at all. Noticing the silence, he looked up, calling my name while searching the house. But I wasn't there. I was in the car with Holly and Ken.
Now's the time, Mom.
Right, let's do this.
Go for it, Mom.
Encouraged by Holly, I stepped out of the car. As Tom was about to re-enter the house, I called out, "Hey, wait." He turned around in shock, making a strange noise. I took a deep breath before speaking.
Tom, we need to talk.
Talk?
We can reschedule the trip some other time, can't we?
Okay.
Then, why don't you take a look behind you?
Behind? As he turned, Tom saw Holly and Ken standing behind me. But his reaction to seeing Ken was one of fear.
You are.
Long time no see. I'm married to Holly. You knew that, right?
I'm aware of it.
Where did all that momentum go just now? Ken, with a smile on his face, bowed and reached out for a handshake with Tom. But Tom, shaking off his hand, yelled with a face like a demon.
What happened to my request? You said the results would be quick, but there's been no word at all.
Oh, was that so?
You seemed quite happy plotting your get-rich-quick schemes behind the scenes from dawn till dusk. What's that supposed to mean? I haven't heard anything about it.
Of course, we've got evidence. Your mother was worried about you, but as Holly said, you're just a man after a quick fortune. And then, Ken, having somehow seized them earlier, pulled out several credit cards. Due to Tom's get-rich-quick schemes, the borrowed amount was so high that it was beyond repayment. Let's end this. I can't see you fixing this.
You should apologize to your mother first, like a man would.
Tom muttered something under his breath with a face like the end of the world, but eventually, he slowly bowed his head. In a barely audible voice, Tom said, "I'm sorry." Thanks to Ken's efforts, a brilliant lawyer, Tom's debts came to light. I conveyed to Ken that living together any longer would be meaningless. Ken smiled and said, "Exactly," and proceeded with the paperwork. The detail was about reducing the debt on Tom's cards. However, I decided not to cooperate because I believe in taking responsibility, so I communicated that direction.
Is divorce the right way to go?
Yes, please. Understood.
I will discuss it with Tom again after reviewing the divorce papers. May I act as your representative?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you as well.
Having given permission for him to act as a representative, Ken also mentioned he would get consent from the person involved later. Meanwhile, Tom was doing a cleaning job. It seems Tom says the consequences of freely spending money as a CEO have caught up to him. Self-inflicted, yet he dares to complain. We decided to file for divorce after our final discussion. Until the very end, Tom kept whining, "I don't want to separate. Stop your futile resistance. I believe it's utterly wrong to ever cause trouble for others again. And instead of hiding and being exposed later, it's better to speak up when necessary. Money, while convenient, can also bring one's life crashing down." Afterward, Tom and I divorced. I started living alone, something I had always wanted, but it felt lonely after always living with someone. When Holly heard about it, she suggested living together. When I asked if she was sure, Holly gladly agreed. Greeted by Holly and Ken. And their little girl, born in the meantime. Her tiny hands grasped my fingers tightly. Pure, tearful eyes looked up at me, making me feel truly grateful. Seeing this, Holly and Ken smiled happily.
Mom, it's a surprise.
A surprise?
Yes, feel my belly?
I felt a slight movement in Holly's belly. Looking up, I asked Holly, "A second one?"
Yes. It seems I was already pregnant when we started exposing Dad's debts. That's great. I'm so happy to have the chance to care for a child again.
Yes. We're counting on you for a while, Mom.
Leave it to me.
Holly stood smiling beside me. And Ken wanted to get in on the action, saying, "Of course, I'll help out too." It was rare for him to show defiance, and Holly laughed as if it was amusing. Ken is serious about work and now preparing for the second child with Holly. I can't be outdone by the young couple, so I decided to start yoga. As you age, maintaining physical strength becomes necessary. If I'm going to help raise my granddaughter, I need to be fit. Living day by day, especially being careful with money, we plan to live happily and support each other. Could you move? You're in the way there.
Hey, wait a sec.
As she said that, my stepdaughter, squatting down, kicked me with her foot while I was cleaning the hallway. I lost my balance and ended up sitting down hard. This kind of thing was a daily occurrence, always happening when my husband, Simon, wasn't around, as if she was targeting those moments to harass me. Hey!
Why did you even marry Dad?
What? You're after his money, aren't you? He makes a good amount, after all.
That's not true at all.
It really wasn't. I didn't even know what Simon did for a living or how much he earned until right before we got married. Well, whatever. You'll be leaving here soon anyway.
What are you thinking?
If you want to know, how about you beg me?
That's not happening.
Are you sure? It'll be worse for you if Dad finds out. I couldn't cause trouble for Simon. I had left my pride behind when I divorced my previous husband.
Tell me, please.
You actually did it. That's seriously messed up.
It was a lie.
Of course it was. Are you dumb? I didn't say you could stop, though. Then, she tried to hold me down. Old ladies like you should just crawl around. I heard the door open, and Simon came back home. No way. He's back? It'll be much worse for you if you tell Dad. I couldn't say such a thing. What's going on here? Just noticed some trash on the floor. You're home early today, aren't you? Yeah, I am. Actually, I've got another business trip coming up. It'll be for a week. When does it start? It's still a bit away. I felt a chilling gaze from behind and got goosebumps. Though there was still some time before Simon's business trip, I ended up breaking my leg at the worst possible timing. Somehow, I managed to be discharged from the hospital, but that's when the real hell began. And Simon left for his business trip. Michelle had been eagerly waiting for this moment. I'm going on a trip, so give me some money.
What? There's no way.
Don't lie to me. I know about it. Saying that, she started rummaging through the third drawer of the dresser. See? I knew it. I'll be taking this as my travel funds, then. What Michelle had found was the $20,000 I had saved up for emergencies.
Wait!
Though I had been discharged, I still needed crutches to walk. As I tried to stand and chase after Michelle, she grabbed my crutches and broke them in half against the wall.
How could you do this?
I don't need fakes like you. Just try not to die. And so, I was left alone in the second floor room. Michelle went on her trip, leaving me all alone. There was no longer any need to hold back. A devil whispered inside me. Seek revenge. 7 days later, Michelle came home and, sensing something was off, rushed upstairs in a panic. And so began my revenge. I'm Sally, and I'll be turning 45 this year. I live with my husband, Simon, and his daughter, Michelle. I had thought we would lead a happy life together when we first got married. Surely everyone thinks that at first. Now, I find myself reminiscing more and more about the time when I first met Simon. How did it come to this? Simon and I got married a year ago, but we were originally just shop owners and customers. I had just divorced and honestly had almost no will to live. At that time, I was managing a small cafe that I had started with my previous husband by myself. You will be fine. Thanks. Simon was a regular customer who often visited the cafe. I've been through a divorce too, you know. Really? But I thought you said things were looking like they might work out. I never thought that would happen, especially not cheating. And to think, she seemed so kind. I vaguely remember her face from the times he came to the shop with her.
And with two people at that. I almost passed out right there. That's, well, shocking.
We ended up sharing our feelings, comforting each other. Somehow, we clicked, and we started meeting outside of the shop as well. It began with just meals, but soon we were taking trips on weekends.
By the way, you had a daughter, right? Is she okay? She's in high school now, so she's fine. But still, a girl, you know. Right. Sally didn't have kids, after all. Yeah, that's right.
We thought it impolite to probe too deeply into each other's family matters, so we never brought it up. Though we never officially confessed, after nearly a year together, it felt like we were dating. Not that I was too hung up on definitions. Then, there was this moment.
You know. Yeah? We seem to share a lot of the same values and thoughts. I guess so. That's why I think we're a good match. I think so too. So, we should probably spend more time together. Wait, what are you trying to say?
Will you marry me?
Marry.
Is that a no?
It's not that, but...
I couldn't give an immediate answer. I just couldn't shake off my ex-husband. My divorce was due to psychological abuse. And when he felt like he could be accused, he vanished, leaving only the divorce papers behind. Of course, I don't believe Simon would ever do something like that. I want to be with Sally, always. I'm comfortable with you. And I'm not asking for anything. Simon kept insisting on how much I meant to him. I've never been approached like this before.
Are you okay?
Sorry, got a bit too excited. Seeing him like that. I couldn't help but find it endearing.
About your proposal, if you're okay with me.
Really? That's great. But my worries weren't over yet. I had yet to meet Simon's daughter. That chance came soon enough. Let me introduce you. This is my daughter, Michelle. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. I'm Sally. So, Dad's decided to marry Sally. That's right. Congratulations. Thanks. Looks like we'll have to move then. The engagement went over smoothly. Then came the moving preparations.
I've never asked before, but what does Simon do?
Now that you mention it, I haven't told you. He works as an interpreter. An interpreter. I would have never guessed. Right? Simon is fluent in 5 languages.
But, he might have to travel for work, which could be inconvenient. That's okay.
Appreciate it. The move went smoothly, and our life as a family of 3 began. Michelle, initially quiet, gradually opened up. Sally. Oh, no.
Mom? You don't have to call me that if it feels forced. Just use whatever's comfortable for you.
Thanks. So, I was wondering why you decided to get married.
Well, maybe because I was passionately talking into wanting to get married for hours?
Really? Dad did that? From what I've heard, Simon seemed to be a serious guy who didn't joke much at home. But, the Simon I've seen is quite the opposite, full of humor. Our relationship continued to deepen, and Michelle went off to college. But then, Michelle started acting strangely.
Michelle, about Dad's upcoming business trip.
She used to respond normally, but now. Sorry, but can you not talk to me right now?
What's wrong? You weren't like this before.
Huh? Are you seriously clueless? It didn't take long to see Michelle's true colors. Well, I'm off on my business trip. I'll be back the day after tomorrow.
Got it. Take care.
Okay, I'm off. It was the first time Michelle and I would be alone together. Ever since her sudden change of attitude a while ago, I've found it a bit difficult to interact with her. Maybe she's having a tough time adjusting to college. I couldn't tell. But Michelle made the first move. Hey, can you not get too cocky?
I'm not trying to.
Huh?
Just look at how Dad acts.
He's always talking about you.
That doesn't mean I'm getting cocky. Your smugness is irritating.
What are you trying to do? cozy up to Dad.
What are you talking about?
The complaints continued. Listening to Michelle, one thing became clear. She really loves her dad.
Are you jealous by any chance?
A moment of silence followed. Huh? Why would I be jealous of you? I'm not a child anymore. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I would regret saying that later on. Michelle locked herself in her room and wouldn't come out. Even knocking got no response. Then, the next day. I'm going out with friends, give me some money.
Money? Don't you get an allowance from Dad?
That's not enough.
Then, we can talk about it when he gets back.
Michelle, scratching her head, slammed her hand on the desk. Didn't you listen? I said I'm going out with friends. Just give it to me. Realizing she wouldn't give up, I decided to give her the money.
Is this enough?
Only $100? The shop's doing well, right? Give me more.
That's all you're getting. I could tell Dad, you know?
With a face like she'd swallowed a bug, Michelle left. I couldn't help but sigh. Why did it come to this? When Simon returned from his trip, Michelle acted as if nothing had happened.
How were the two of you? It was your first time alone, right?
Before I could answer, Michelle cut in. We were fine. Got along well, right, Mom? She beamed at me. Yeah, that's right.
Good. I was a bit worried, but it seems I didn't need to be.
Exactly. Dad worries too much.
Oh, right. I got a souvenir for Sally. A souvenir?
Yes.
Here.
The souvenir was the aromatherapy oil I had mentioned wanting before. Thank you. But wasn't this a limited edition?
Just happened to find it.
I felt Michelle's glaring eyes on me then. Maybe her insides were boiling.
Isn't there something for Michelle?
Right. Almost forgot. Here, Michelle, this is for you. It was obviously a much larger bag than mine. She lit up with excitement.
Thank you, Dad.
But when she saw what was inside, Michelle's excitement faded.
I remembered you saying you liked it before, so I chose it.
Thanks. I'm happy. Despite her words, her face was strained.
I'm tired now. I'm going to bed. Okay, good night.
Once Simon was in the bedroom, Michelle threw her gift on the floor.
What are you doing?
Why do you get something expensive and I get this childish stuffed animal? Michelle had received a stuffed animal of a character popular among the younger generation as her souvenir. Let's trade.
Huh?
Just give it to me.
Stop it.
Michelle tried to forcibly take the bottle of aromatherapy oil from me.
Dad will wake up, you know?
Then give it to me quickly. After a struggle, I couldn't match the strength of a teenager. The bottle slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. It's your fault for not giving it to me sooner. Blaming me entirely, Michelle returned to her room. I gathered the pieces of the broken bottle. Luckily, a little bit of oil was left, which I carefully put back into the box. The smell of lavender spread throughout the living room. This wasn't how I wanted to experience it. I kept scrubbing the floor over and over. The next morning, Simon noticed the smell too. Did you use it already?
Yeah, but maybe I used a bit too much.
No, it's fine. I love this scent anyway. Then Michelle came into the living room. Good morning, Michelle. Smells good, doesn't it? Yeah.
Got classes today?
Yeah, I do.
Are they fun?
Kind of. She looked grumpy when she woke up, but her mood improved as she talked with Simon. Before we knew it, it was time to head to the shop.
I'll be leaving soon. All right. Is it that time already? Then I'll come with you. Just give me a minute.
Because our conversation was interrupted, Michelle started to get irritated. Her irritation was clearly directed at me. Even without seeing her face. Sorry for the wait. Shall we go then?
Yeah. Don't be late, Michelle.
Once we arrived at the shop, we immediately started preparing. Thankfully, we had a full house of customers again today. All thanks to Simon's various pieces of advice and even financial support, despite my objections. He insisted it was for my sake too. While closing the shop at 7 p.m., an unexpected person showed up. "Long time no see, Sally." I turned around at the familiar voice.
Why are you here?
"Why? This place is mine too, isn't it?"
It's mine now. Leave.
"I've changed. So, let's start over."
I've remarried. I can't be with you. Even if I wasn't married, I wouldn't want to be with you.
Realizing this could go badly, I tried to push past my ex-husband to get outside. But he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. "I can't forget you." He started to lick my neck, giving me goosebumps all over. Then, I heard the sound of a camera shutter from somewhere. I couldn't see who it was, but they ran off immediately after. With that distraction, I managed to push him away and escape.
Don't ever come here again. I'll call the cops.
"All right," he said as he left. My heart was still racing. I never thought he would show up here. I quickly closed the shop and went home. "I'm home." No reply. Simon had said he'd be late, too. Maybe Michelle hadn't returned from school yet. I sat down to think about how to deal with my ex showing up at the shop. While I was lost in thought, someone entered the living room. It was Michelle. With a somewhat smug look. "Michelle.
To think you'd do something like that behind Dad's back."
What are you talking about?" "It's too late to hide it now." Michelle showed me her phone's screen. It was from when my ex-husband confronted me at the shop.
So, it was you who took that photo. That's solid evidence of cheating, isn't it? If I show this to Dad, you're finished. You're misunderstanding something. Excuses now? It's not an excuse. The person in this photo isn't a lover.
Then who is it? Tell me.
That man is. Your voices were loud enough to hear outside. What's going on?
Just then, Simon came back home. "Listen to this.
This tramp was cheating at the shop." Cheating?
Look at this." She showed Simon the photo. "See, just like I said."
This is.
Simon was taken aback, as Michelle struggled to suppress her laughter. But then.
Did everything turn out okay?
Yes.
Nothing else happened?
No.
He ran off when I said I'd call the cops. I see. What are you guys talking about? Michelle, did you really think this photo was evidence of cheating? Well, anyone would think that if they saw this. This man, isn't he your ex-husband?
Simon asked, even though he had never shown her a photo of my ex-husband before. Exactly. He wanted to get back together with me.
We need to come up with a plan then.
She could be lying, you know.
Enough. If that's what you want to believe, then fine. Time will tell.
Later on, they went to the police, and the shop started to be watched more closely. Michelle's photo proved to be useful. It was also discovered that my ex-husband was already wanted for fraud. Since this incident, Michelle became much quieter and started to treat me kindly. Like when Simon and I first got married.
Mom, I have a favor to ask. A favor? My friend's birthday is coming up, and I was wondering if we could use the shop to celebrate. That's fine by me.
Thanks. She had never relied on me this much before. So, I ended up trusting her words, forgetting all about the past. But that trust would lead me into an even deeper darkness. Michelle kept being kind to me, asking about the shop and my relationship with Simon, things she would never normally inquire about. This continued daily, eventually causing me to become suspicious. And then, the day came.
I'll come by after the shop closes. Got it. Is something happening today? Remember, Michelle wanted to celebrate her friend's birthday here. Oh yeah, she did mention that. But keep it moderate. I will.
I waited for Michelle and her friends after closing the shop. 5 people arrived, including Michelle. But all the others were men. For the time being, I prepared the alcohol we bought and the party started.
Come on, Mom, have a drink with us. I'm good. I'm not much of a drinker.
I've always just sipped on a glass of alcohol, hardly ever drinking. Despite my refusal, they kept insisting, so I ended up drinking a glass of beer. It had been years since I last drank, so it hit me instantly.
Come on, it's a special day.
Drink up. I lost count of how many drinks I had after that. Next thing I knew, I was sitting on the sofa. Michelle was saying something, but I couldn't make it out. Then, I felt like I was being undressed. My vision gradually cleared.
What are you doing?
Indeed, they were trying to take off my clothes. Now they were attempting to remove my skirt too. I tried to escape, but I was held down and couldn't move.
Michelle! Stop them right now.
Why?
Was everything a lie?
Obviously.
By the way, these guys are interested in someone like you. I posted online and they showed up right away. What about friends?
That was a lie too.
I don't even know their names.
I tried desperately to move, but they were too strong, and I couldn't do anything. Finally, my skirt was removed, and I was left in my underwear.
Look here.
I'm going to record this.
Do you think this is okay?
Oh right. Can't have sound, or it'll be too obvious. I'll have to delete that later.
What's the purpose of doing this?
To show Dad. To get a divorce. You're not needed here. You're annoying, so maybe I should gag you too.
Just stop it.
Really, you're so annoying. Just do whatever you want with her. In the end, I was stripped naked and violated by the men. I don't remember anything after that. When I realized, the shop was empty, and I just felt nauseous. I quickly got dressed and went home.
You're late.
Where's Michelle?
She's already back.
I see. I showered, trying to wash off the men's touch. I couldn't tell anyone about this. But this was exactly what Michelle wanted. After that, I had no choice but to accept whatever Michelle did to me. You're in the way there. Can you move?
Wait a second.
As I said that, Michelle kicked me while I was squatting down, cleaning the corridor. I lost my balance and fell. Hey!
Why did you marry Dad?
Huh? It's for the money, right? He earns a lot, after all.
That's not true.
Of course, it's not. I didn't even know about my husband's job or income until just before we got married. Well, it doesn't matter. You'll be leaving here soon anyway.
What are you planning?
If you want to know, why don't you beg me?
That's impossible.
Really? I think it'd be worse for you if Dad found out. I can't trouble Simon. And now, I'm at Michelle's mercy.
Please, tell me.
You actually did it. This is seriously messed up.
Was that a lie?
Obviously. Are you stupid? And I didn't say you could stop. Then, she tried to pin me down. An old lady like you should just grovel on the floor. I heard the front door open, and Simon came back. No way. He's back?
If you tell Dad, things will get much worse.
I couldn't possibly say that.
What are you doing there?
Just some trash on the floor. You're back early today, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got another business trip coming up. A week this time.
When does it start?
Not for a while yet.
I felt a chilling gaze from behind and goosebumps formed on my skin. Then, I ended up breaking my bones. It was all Michelle's doing. I was pushed from behind while going down the stairs at home. I tumbled to the bottom, and when I looked up, Michelle was laughing like she was possessed. I'll call an ambulance for you. But say you fell yourself, okay? After being taken to the hospital, I needed surgery. My left leg was fixed with bolts, and my right ankle was broken, leaving me unable to walk.
Are you okay? Don't push yourself.
Thank you.
I heard you fell down the stairs.
Well. Michelle was looking at us from behind Simon. Yeah, that's what happened. So silly of me.
For now, just focus on getting better.
Michelle occasionally came to visit me under the guise of checking in, but it wasn't out of concern, she just came to laugh at me. How are you feeling? Average, I guess. Just take it easy. Though, I guess you can't do much since you can't walk. I had recovered enough to walk with crutches. But even after being discharged, I couldn't feel at ease. Before I knew it, the day Simon had to leave for a business trip arrived. I'm sorry to leave you like this, especially now.
It's work, so it can't be helped. Michelle, you take good care of her, okay?
Yeah, leave it to me. Simon left for his trip. Michelle had been eagerly waiting for this moment. As soon as Simon left, she came to me. I'm going on a trip, so give me some money.
What? There's no way.
Don't lie. I know you have it. She then started rummaging through the third drawer of the dresser.
See? I knew it. I'll be taking this as my travel fund.
What Michelle had found was the $20,000 I had saved for emergencies.
Wait. How did you know about that?
I'm not going to tell you.
Did you sneak in here?
Maybe. Her expression made it clear it was true. She hadn't taken it before, perhaps wanting to see the despair on my face as she took it right in front of me. I tried to stand up and chase after Michelle. Just die already. She grabbed my crutches, smashing them against the wall until they broke in half.
How could you do this?
People like you, a fake mother, are not needed. Just try not to die, okay? And so, I was left alone in the upstairs room. Michelle went on her trip, leaving me by myself. It was clear now, I didn't need to endure any longer. A voice within me whispered, "Seek revenge." It was difficult without crutches, but not impossible to stand. I thought of contacting Simon, but my smartphone had been taken by Michelle, leaving me no way to reach out. But I couldn't just give up. Somehow, I made it down to the first floor, used an umbrella as a makeshift cane, and went to the neighbors for help. I borrowed their phone and called Simon.
What? Are you serious?
It might be hard to believe.
I'm coming home right away. Just hang in there a little longer.
Simon returned as soon as he could.
What happened?
I recounted everything Michelle had done to me since we got married, as far as I could remember. Finally, I mustered the courage to tell him about the incident at the shop. Simon was trembling either from anger or shock.
I can't forgive this, not even if she's my daughter.
Will you help me?
Huh?
If your anger is real, I need your help to get back at her.
Okay. What do you need me to do?
Well, about that. We prepared and waited for Michelle's return. 7 days later, an oblivious Michelle came home cheerfully. I'm home.
No one's answering? I wonder how she's doing. Maybe she really died.
Then, as she tried to go upstairs, she noticed something was off.
What? This smell, it's like something's rotting.
Michelle opened the bedroom door. And then she let out a scream that echoed throughout the house. Simon quietly approached the bedroom. Peeking in, he saw something resembling a person lying on the bed.
What should we do? Should we dispose of it somewhere? But it might be found immediately.
Hearing that, Simon burst into the room. What are you doing?
Dad? Why are you here? I thought you were on a business trip. I got a call saying Michelle was up to no good. But...
Michelle turned her eyes to the bed. She must have thought I was actually dead. I'm right here.
Why are you alive? Then, what's this?
Oh, that?
Simon and I prepared it. But I never thought you'd try to dispose of it.
How rotten can you get? We had found a love doll that looked like a person while searching for something convincing. It was expensive, but we couldn't worry about the cost. So, you haven't learned independence at your age, huh? Then I'll dismantle that. Go ahead. Michelle pulled out her smartphone and showed Simon the video in question. However, Simon showed no reaction.
What's this supposed to mean? Come on, this is clearly over the line, isn't it? This proves how dangerous she is. That's why you should divorce her. The only dangerous person here is you. I know everything. How? Did she tell you herself? Yes, and you know what? The shop is fully equipped with security cameras. Everything was recorded. Even the things you ordered. No way!
At this point, Michelle had no way out.
Just so you know, what you did is a crime. And so is what those men did. You've done something foolish. I wish I could punish you with my own hands.
Seeing Simon's face, Michelle seemed to lose all strength and just sat down.
The police have already been informed. You might even get arrested. Give up. You're no daughter or anything to me anymore. You've gone too far.
Soon after, the police were notified. A patrol car came to take her in for questioning. She looked as if her soul had left her body.
Are you okay? I'm fine. But Simon, I'm ready for whatever comes.
The police said that the men who attacked me were also arrested. They all claimed they were instigated by a woman. The exchanges on Michelle's smartphone were the conclusive evidence. Later, Michelle was charged as an instigator.
This was the right thing, wasn't it? Of course. Sally, you did nothing wrong. Yeah.
Simon hugged me gently. There was no comfort like it. Later, we decided to visit Michelle. She looked emaciated, almost like a different person.
Dad. You came. I came to see if you've really learned your lesson. Of course, I have. I doubt that. Why are you even here? It's all your fault, isn't it?
Simon sighed deeply.
Just like Sally said, you haven't learned a thing. No, that's not true. I really have. Believe me. You're an adult now. You'll have to live with your actions and their consequences. Goodbye.
Simon left first.
Now you see. If only you hadn't done what you did. Or maybe if you'd been more independent, this wouldn't have happened. What are you talking about? You've been abandoned. So good luck. Wait. Come back here.
When was the last time I felt this relieved? But the scars I've received will last a lifetime. Still, Simon is by my side. And that's all I need.